Okay, good morning everyone who are there in online and you here in Lisbon. Welcome to the Smart Data Sprint. I'm Janna Joceli Omena, founder and coordinator of this initiative, and also invited associate professor in digital media and methods here at Nova University Lisbon. So that's our first hybrid experience, so I hope we can all learn a little bit about that. And for those, just check. Yeah, and for those who are here for the first time, this is the edition number 6 of the Data Sprint, as you can see in these GIFs. And this initiative, it is supported by Innova Media Lab, Nova, and the doctoral program in digital media of Nova Social Sciences and Humanities School. So over the past 5 years, right, a long list of participants, collaborators, remarkable keynotes have joined the Smart Data Sprint, and also innovative projects were developed here, inspiring new initiatives, projects, papers, and even master courses. So again, on behalf of the organizing team, please receive our warm welcome. And to kick off the week, what I want to do in this opening and very short opening talk is to address a technicity perspective, or maybe to argue in favor of a technicity perspective to the practice of digital methods. And to do that, first, I want to explain and again perhaps argue why we should care or even consider such a perspective when doing and using these methods. Then I want to introduce 3 practical principles of this perspective as building blocks to the practice of digital methods. And then I want to conclude with what I have right now as perhaps 4 general contributions, right? So, and to start this talk, and I want to make clear the specific angle in which I am using the notion or the concept of technicity. And for that, I wanted to list 3 aspects. So I am understanding technicity here as a means to think and rethink the way we design and implement digital methods, right? Also as a domain of technical expertise and iterative technical practices, and as an understanding of a network of relations with the computational mediums required to implement the methods. And in this way, we perhaps can think that technicity refers also to a field of knowledge that combines theoretical, technical, and practical frameworks. And another important note before sharing with you what I'm considered that refers to this perspective, it is to explain how I am seeing the notion of medium, right? Because he is considered under a broader scope, not only in the sense of communication media. So in that sense, when using digital methods, I am considering not only the platform mechanisms as medium to be learned from and repurposed, but also I am considering research software, for example, such as Gephi, Mimispector GUI, and other web-based applications that one can make use on a methodological chain, such as Vision APIs, because these mediums have particular forms of practice and modes of operation that take an active role in digital research and also add extra layers of meaning to our subject of analysis. So And having clarified my take on the concept of technicity, we may now ask, right, why a technicity perspective, why we should bother or care about it. And to respond to this question, I have actually one main response or answer, which is because the practice of digital methods somehow forces us to develop a digital intellect, right? And to help me to explain this digital intellect, in the seminal paper about the computational turn, David Perry grounds his notion of digital Bildung as the development of a digital intellect as something opposed to a digital intelligence. And Barry's comparison is based on the work of Richard Hofstadter, who explains, open quotes, intellect is the critical, creative, and contemplative side of mind, and it refers to a search for meanings of situations as a whole. And as opposition, digital, or on the other side, digital intelligence would size immediate meaning in the situation and evaluate it, because it seeks to grasp, manipulate, reorder, adjust, ponders, wonders, theorizes, criticizes. So in an enforcement to these, I'd say that scholars from different fields have been calling for a rejuvenation of our scientific theories and methodologies, asking how we can extract scientific meaning from data, software functioning, infrastructure, methods, right? That often were not created for such purpose. And clearly, one could say that there is a requirement on building not only practical, but also mental modes when doing and using the methods. And in our perspective, in fact, I think finding a way to develop such mindset may be the greatest challenge of these methods. And because it is something, right, that is less related to knowing how to code or do things with software, and perhaps more related to a certain proximity with software and data literacy. And it is here that the notion of technicity, I argue, that can help, right, in the practice of digital methods. So to support my argument, now I want to explain what these perspectives refers to, and that's going to be my main focus. And then I would close by quickly sharing with you how we can develop a sensitivity to a technicity of computational mediums. And this specific angle derives from the work of Gilbert Simondon, and being also inspired by Bernard Reeder's mechanological perspective on software. However, here, and my standpoint is on software using rather than software making. So a technicity perspective, first and foremost, refers to the attitude of being conceptually, technically, and empirically acquainted with computational mediums, right? And such an attitude in the context of digital methods requires some efforts and also some extra time. So I'm referring here to an understanding of the medium in its own right and in relation with others. And when I say medium or computational mediums here, I am considering, the ensemble of mediums that it's necessary to implement a methodological chain when we use when we practice digital methods. And this understanding of the mediums in their own right and in relation to others is very different from a more utilitarian perception of the idea of the software, of the idea that the software does everything by itself. So, and then by knowing the computational mediums or the medium well and using the knowledge gained from a practical experience, so we start reasoning with and about computational mediums, right? But never losing sight of the object of study. So we use this knowledge as means for inquiring and for answering research questions. And so for example, and I'm not explaining this full protocol, but this is a protocol for curating online images, building and analyzing networks that get advantage of computer vision, and also online images. So maybe when implementing a research protocol like this, or another one, right? And with the purpose of using networks like these ones for analysis, shouldn't we account for the technicity of the computational mediums involved in this process, rather than immediately sizing the meaning of the protocol outputs, trying right away to pondering, theorizing, conceptualizing, or manipulating what we see before taking into account the medium in their own right in relation to the others and etc., their potentialities and limitations. So highlighted in blue, we see when in the implementation of the protocol, you see when software specific potentialities and technological grammars emerge, right? And add extra layers of meaning to the object of analysis. And these we can see, for example, in the beginning of the protocol, in the qualitative front, I would say, of the methods, such as the query design, but also the platform environment mechanisms, the cultures of use, where the image data set come from. And also an understanding of the computational, an understanding of the computer vision features, or for instance, APIs, and how they assist, facilitate, or sometimes they are not helpful to image analysis. Also, the work or the functioning of the force directed algorithm used to spatialize the network, that also plays a role in terms of giving extra layers of meaning to our subject of analysis. So a second step relating to a technicity perspective involves an understanding of computational mediums from different levels, that is, as elements, individuals, and ensembles. And this is something also inspired by Simondon's very peculiar appreciation of technical objects, but here somehow trying to be useful for digital methods and method implementation. So this distinction between elements, individuals, and ensembles can be very helpful somehow. And but first, let me say that we can think, perhaps in an unrefined way, individuals as research software, such as Gephi, MIM Inspector. We can think of elements as algorithmic techniques, recommendation systems, or the outputs of computer vision features. And the elements here, they they should be objects of our attention and special care because they add new meanings to our subject of analysis. And the concept of ensemble is seen as the combination of all steps necessary to implement research methods, as the protocol that I just shared with you in the previous slides. So my argument here is when we start understanding perhaps this ensemble of computational mediums, considering like different levels as the individuals and as ensemble, this can be very helpful for us to understand the role, potentials, and practical qualities of research software in a methodological chain, being aware of the impressions, effects, and readjustments that they add to our subject of analysis. But we also can be helpful because we know when and why to value certain elements in the research design. So, and the last practical methodological principle we can derive from a technicity perspective in the context of method implementation, it refers to our role as researchers or students, in a sense that we should be able to orchestrate and interpret an ensemble of computational mediums. And this ensemble, like that protocol that I shared before, it is composed by the medium and the subject of analysis under investigation. For instance, Instagram and COVID-related topics, the computational mediums necessary to implement research, the required technical practices, and our intervention as researchers or students. Yes, the four aspects that I just mentioned, right, that compose. So we should be able to not only to understand but orchestrate. And to help me with this idea of the researcher as someone who orchestrate and interpret an ensemble of computational mediums, I just want to use again this protocol, but now thinking of Simondon's analogy of the conductor and the musicians. And this analogy here, it's like can shed light on our role as researchers or students, as one who directs technical ensembles, as well delineates close relations with elements and their integrations in this ensemble. So allow me here to go through these, to read this short paragraph. So we can say here that the researcher or the student should take the same position of the conductor, who is familiar with the whole and the smaller parts of what makes an orchestra, the general and the tiny details produced by each musical instrument. Only in this way is she able to conduct her musicians. Her decisions cannot be taken individually or isolated, but depend on and are affected by the performance of the musicians while they play. So I like very much this analogy used by Simondon to explain a little bit and to talk about the role of technical objects and how we can think about that nowadays using digital methods. And I also think the usefulness of this protocol does not end there, because as it exemplifies also how the methodological process with digital methods always result in the creation of a second order of grammatization, because it is based on existing technological grammar. So if you start thinking, So what is captured by platforms, units of expression, communication, and then what is afforded by software or by the outputs of computer vision APIs. So we see these in this protocol, but however, when you end up the final results about the research object and the content, they are neither entirely represented by platform technological grammars, nor the technicity of computational mediums, but also it is a mix of both, added by the researcher agency or the student agency. And now running to the final ideas of the technicity perspective. So this is like the summary of the three practical aspects that I shared with you that refers to an attitude of being conceptually, technically, and empirically acquainted with technical mediums, right? Understanding the medium in its own right in relation to others, and then being capable of using that knowledge to make inquiry, to respond research questions and make new forms of research questions. An understanding of computational mediums from different levels that can help us to know what to evaluate, when to evaluate, and why, and being aware of these extra layers of meanings that certain computational mediums add up to our object of study. The researcher function, so our function, right, to know how to orchestrate and interpret a technical ensemble. And let's say that I would say that when we make room for computational mediums as carriers of meaning, when we start growing an understanding of technical elements while practicing digital methods, and finally we feel comfortable to establish such a sensitivity to the technicity of the mediums, perhaps we can fill that gap, or we can walk towards the digital intellect that I was talking at the beginning, and the need of a search mind frame to implement methods with the digital and platforms, infrastructures, online data, and etc. And having said that, I want only to, I'm just looking at my time. Yeah, Rita?
It's okay.
Okay. So, yeah. And this visual schema, the pixels in the background of this schema, right, or this illustration, represents knowledge that begins with the knowledge of the researcher, area of expertise, which changes and evolve over time through practicing the methods and getting familiar with computational mediums. The cubic forms, different from the rest, tells us about the challenges encountered, especially in the first contact with digital methods, perspective and approach. And the researcher attitude is represented by the lines in the figure. So it is kind of like, let's say, a step by step, which takes some time, and we start seeing things differently, then we start doing things differently, and then we can no longer separate the content and the substance of computational mediums from the way we design and implement methods. And by doing so, let's say that we would avoid fatal misalignments between research objective and the constraints and potentials of mediums that we work on and with. We also maybe can be able to devise research research design with digital methods by knowing to decide what pieces of software should be stacked in a methodological chain to solve research problems. Also, to think with and repurpose, if necessary, technical mediums, right? But when we know, by learning to value elements in the full spectrum of digital methods, while we keep in mind the way in which these mediums add meanings to the subject of analysis, and also to discover new arrangements when doing digital methods by using technical imagination, or to create or to find solutions to raise new research questions with this sort of mindset, right? Guided by the care for the technicity of computational mediums. So, and with these final notes, I just want to thank you all here and all there at home for your time. Thank you very much.